Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey.
How
Happy
are you?
post Thanksgiving.
Yes. Happy post Thanksgiving. How did your Thanksgiving go?
It was awesome. It was so busy. So
Oh yeah.
busy. But it was awesome. Like we had family come into town last Monday
Nice.
and we still have family until this weekend, but they're not here. So the
Okay.
house is empty. Yeah, we had my husband's parents came, my cousin came, so we've just had a full house. And like I was saying before we started recording, today, well, yesterday really, but today really is the first day that the house has just been quiet again, like nobody's here. So I took some time to go outside and work on my garden this morning, and it's cold here in Florida. It was 51 degrees when I woke up this morning. The high today is going to be 58, which is cold for us. So I put my heater on, and just as I was finishing a call with a client, a hot flash kicked in. So that's why my cheeks are rosy. Like that heater, that heater just like triggered that hot flash. So anyway, but it was wonderful. It was beautiful. We had 20 people come over for Thanksgiving. The food was delicious. We were cooking all week. So yeah, so now I'm just kind of like organizing that, putting the house back together, putting all the fall things away, and bringing out the Christmas things. So I'm excited about that. How about you? How was your holiday?
It was good. Yeah. We had like three extra people show up, which was fun. And same, just cooking and eating and just enjoying time together. And it was a great time. I mean, we had like lots of kids in the house, just like family and stuff. And my niece, who is like 27, she's pregnant with her second kid. And so she did like the gender reveal on Thanksgiving. Yeah. So it'll be a little girl. And yeah,
Oh,
she's excited. Well, at first she was kind of like, oh no, because she has a son and she wanted another boy. And so anyway, it was great. She's excited, but the initial finding out, she was like, what? So she kept it a secret, and then they all like she bit into a cupcake, and then the frosting was the pink. So
how cute.
yeah, yeah, it was cute. Yeah.
Congratulations to her.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, she's funny. She's gonna name her Jillian. So
Beautiful.
yeah, Jillian May, I think. Is
Oh,
that
is
right?
there
No,
did
Jillian April, because she'll be born in April.
Oh, nice, nice. Is Jillian a name that she likes, or is it like a name from someone in the family? Why Jillian?
So we love the movie Practical Magic, like all of the girls in the family. And I don't know if you've seen it.
I
It's
what
old.
I don't know. I don't
It
I'm not sure.
has Nicole Kidman and Sandra Bullock in it.
Okay.
Anyway, it's really old, but Jillian is the name of Nicole Kidman's character.
I
So
love
little Jilly Bean. Yeah.
it. I
So
love
yeah. Yeah.
it.
Anyway, so yeah, it was good.
Cool, 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 cool. So I loved the post that you made on LinkedIn. I think it was yesterday where you shared the TED talk on grit.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the inspiration for that video and why you shared it.
I feel like I went on there because I was going to post about finally that teacher's workshop I did. I need to do it. I just need to. But when I went on there, this woman had posted that video, and I don't know why, but something about it, I didn't even have the sound on. It was just like the subtitles. And I just sat there and I read it and I was like, oh, this is really good. I think that I love that in the video, she talks about how in all the different places that she did her analysis of like what was going to make a person successful or like thrive and what wasn't, it didn't matter how prestigious or how like what the environment was. The people that really succeeded were the ones with the grit. It wasn't even relevant to IQ. It wasn't relevant to, you know, being privileged in a certain way or a certain uh, school that they were. Because I think she said that one of the studies was at like Harvard or something as well. And it did, so it didn't matter. I mean, she was doing like spelling bees. I don't know if you watched the video, but
I did. I did. I
okay.
thought it was
But I,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, and I loved it because I think as business owners, now I know you and I are both educated, but we both know coaches that are not, like, you know, formally educated with like from a university is when I'm speaking.
Mhm.
But I think sometimes, as much as we value, and I know that you value your education and so do I want to encourage people to remember that if you're really called to something, then having the grit, because even the most educated person with a PhD, they're not going to become a successful coach if they don't have the grit behind it, you know? And so grit's one of those really beautiful things that's like a driving force. So I really just felt like inspired yesterday to share that. I really honestly don't know why I felt called to share it, but I saw it and I thought someone needs to hear this. So I'm just going to post it and let it kind of go into the world. So, but I love the idea that no matter our circumstances where we come from, they don't determine where we're going, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway,
I
I don't
wanted
know.
to let's talk about grit a little bit and what that means because I think that that word can have different meanings for
Mhm.
different people. And you know, I thought it was interesting how you made mention about how grit is important for success, that you talk about grit with your clients, you know, in a burnout framework, but you also talk about grit with your kids. And what really came to mind for me when I was watching that video, and what I really appreciated about it was that it was so short. It was like a 6-minute video. I love that. But what immediately came to mind to me when I was watching that video was how important grit is as a business owner, particularly as a solopreneur, right? And I talked a little bit about how I talk about grit, like an experimentation mindset. But in any case, I thought it would be valuable to talk a little bit about grit, like maybe define, not define it, but like, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to me? What does it mean out there? Because I think that helps to drive home the point around why grit is so important, especially in our context here that we're talking about as business owners that run a coaching business, right?
Yeah.
As you talk about grit or think about grit with your clients, like from your perspective, what does that word mean to you?
Are you asking like when I'm having a conversation with a client and how I bring grit in that way?
Yeah.
It's the willingness, the intentionality behind continuing to move forward, not being paralyzed by the circumstances, whether the burnout is so heavy that they feel like they can't get out of bed, or the negative chatter is so loud they feel like they don't know how to silence it. What matters is we start and we try and we keep trying and you keep working towards it. And eventually, when the mindset is shifting away from stopping the chatter, but shifting the thoughts to something more productive, that takes grit to do that. Because even in the most peaceful settings, when there's no burnout, when there's no distraction outwardly, for instance, like, you know, sometimes I'll be like praying and I'm like thinking and just like talking and praying. And all of a sudden, all these thoughts come in, right? And then you have to get back on track. But the willingness to continue to always go back on track is what makes the difference. So it doesn't matter if it's an outward noise that's distracting the progress or the feeling of you can do it versus the internal argument, whatever that looks like, you know? And so when we just know that if we just keep going and we keep trying and we keep that focus, that's like the grit, right? Because burnout is, it can paralyze people. I mean, not physically, of course, but you know, it can make a person feel like nothing they do matters. There is no impact that they can make in their life. Everything they do is in vain. Why bother? They become resentful, they get overwhelmed, and it can be so paralyzing to have that heaviness overshadowing everything, every effort put forward, right? And that's a lot to do with burnout. And so when you have the encouragement to just keep going, even if it's a little bit at a time, which is basically what I do, give bite-sized techniques every week so that they can achieve the goal. But it's little, but it's impactful. But the approach is so intentional, but small enough where it's not adding any extra. That grit of continuing to keep going is what eventually liberates us, right? And there's a difference of giving up, like, I can't, I'm done, versus like, okay, I can do this just for today. I can do this one little thing. And that's grit when it comes, I think, to burnout, right? Like knowing that this little thing, you don't have to measure it, you don't have to worry about it, just try. And that try is what makes the difference, I think. But it takes grit to do that because it's so easy just to be like, no, I just don't feel like it because I'm already so exhausted with everything else. Does that kind of answer the question?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When when people are burnt out and they're having all of these the heaviness, as you called it, which I think is a great way to like visualize what the feeling looks like, right?
Yeah.
It really is a heavy, like a lead blanket that's just on top of you, and it's hard to do anything.
Right.
And what you do with your clients, you give them a little something that they can do every day, right? That doesn't take more time because they probably already don't have a lot of time because they're burnt out, they're stretched way too thin. How is it that they can muster up the energy, the determination, the will to do that one thing when they're already burnt out and
Yeah.
stretched too thin?
Yeah.
Like how can they muster that up to right? Because that is grit.
Mhm.
It's and it may be that grit or some other definition of grit is what got them into the situation in the first place, right? So like what I'm trying to do is kind of like tease out the difference there, because sometimes we get very determined, we get very focused, we go, we continue, and then we end up like digging a track in the mud that is so deep with burnout that it's just hard to move any other way. You help them to come out of that track, right? And you do it with those little steps, those little actions that they can do every day. How is it that people can but like how I guess I don't even know how to formulate that into a question, but when they're at that level, how can they do something different, do that one little action? Maybe
Yeah.
let's talk a
So
little bit about that. For anybody else that might be listening that's relating and like, yeah, I'm feeling a level of burnout myself. How can I've been displaying what I think is grit. Maybe that's what got me here in the first place. But how can I now, like, use that grit in a more positive and healthy way to get myself in a flow instead of digging the track even deeper and turning it into a trench? You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. So I think that the answer to that is a little bit of an echo of what we kind of talked about last week. And that is when we are in a position that everything we've been trying to do by ourselves does not work, we have to try something different and oftentimes get support, right? And so what I really feel like is always the defining factor of a person overcoming burnout or not is that they get support. Because when you are, we kind of again talked about this last week, when someone sees you and says, I know what you're going through, it's going to be okay, like you're going to get through this and I'm going to be right by your side the whole way, right? And so when you encourage someone like, and everything is specific to the personality, the situation, kind of what catapulted them into the burnout, right? Because there's always kind of one thing that they finally were like, that's it. Like, I'm done with it because of this one thing. I mean, there could be Groundhog's Day. It could be the fact that they just didn't have any joy in their life. It could be they were literally feeling like they were working themselves to death. Um, but when they come forward and they're like, I need like something, and then we start talking and I offer the tool to them, there's always so much encouragement that like it may not seem like a lot, but this one little thing is going to change everything in an impactful way. And you don't have to worry about what that change is. Just kind of pull it back in and focus on this little thing for the week, right? And so it could be something like taking a deep breath every 4 hours. If a person feels like they are constantly their chest is tight, you know, I tell people put a timer on. Every 4 hours, take a big deep breath for 30 seconds, just breathe. And then go back to whatever you're doing. And it seems small, right? It seems like, well, we breathe all the time, whatever. But when we take even 30 seconds to breathe, our whole physiological response on the inside changes. Our blood pressure lowers, our heart rate slows down. The stress that we're feeling can start to subside because we're giving oxygen to our brain. We're not doing anything for that moment besides just breathing. We're not breathing fast and we're not breathing hard. We're just breathing deep and easy. And even though it's 30 seconds, that's so impactful because right there in that moment, you're unwinding all that stress. And I think having someone to come back to and say, you know what, I tried that this week and I can't tell you how well it worked. It's ridiculous how much of an impact that had, even in those, the moment. But when someone's walking on the journey with you, when you have someone, that's kind of why you and I started this channel for other coaches, because when we feel like we're alone, it feels like what's the difference? No one cares. No one's worried about whether or not I'm committing to XYZ. And if someone says, how many times they watch YouTube channels and they're like, let's figure out how to meditate, let's figure out how to do this. Well, that's awesome. But if after you watch that channel or that, 20-minute video or whatever, and you try it and it feels good in the moment, but if every other day you don't try to really implement that, then it's sort of like, gone with the wind. So when we have someone that can come back and say, so how did that work for you? Tell me, like, did it work? Did it feel good? Talk with me. What were the thoughts that came forward? What were the feelings that you noticed? Then that causes that beautiful space of self-reflection. Like, okay, I can begin to feel the difference of what burnout has really felt like for me for the last like 6 months, last year, however long, and how different it feels when I'm able to really take a moment and breathe. And when someone is able to listen, it's like it's rewarding because someone's sitting there saying, yeah, I see the progress you've made. This is awesome, you know? And as a specialist, and you are a specialist with your career strategist, but we know how impactful and amazing that is because we know where they've been. So to see even that little bit of a change, it seems small, but it's monumental. And the health benefits alone, right? Just of breathing like that. So I think that's how the grit is, like how you kind of use it to help shift it back to a space of using it for a beneficial area. But it's the idea of coming back to someone and saying, I did this and I was so excited to share with you like the impact it had. Whereas they could tell their coworkers or maybe their partner or spouse, and they might be like, that's cool, but they won't really quite understand how profound that is, right? So, and so yeah, I think that's the difference, right?
It was really helpful to hear an example of one of the strategies because in my mind, I was thinking like, when a person is at that level of exhaustion, how can they add something else? But taking a deep breath every 4 hours, setting a timer and breathe deeply for 30 seconds at a time. I can definitely see how someone can just easily add that to their day and then pay attention to the effects of it and then want to have a conversation about that.
Yeah.
So that
Because
was
it's
really helpful.
awesome. And that's one of the beautiful things as humans. We want to share our successes, right? All the time. Like if you read a phenomenal book, you've like shared it with me before, or if you came across, like we want to share. That's by nature, that's what we do. And we want to share with people who will appreciate it, right?
Yeah,
Do you,
we definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was as you were talking, I was thinking about the holiday, since Thanksgiving just passed, and like I said, we had 20 people over and it was beautiful, exhausting, but it was a beautiful time. And yesterday and today were the first days where the house has just been cleared out, right? Because people have been staying here too all week. So yesterday and today are the first times that I've just been able to have some alone time and some quiet to like reorganize the house, put everything back together, go back outside, and do my things outside of my garden. Anyway, yesterday I spent like the majority of the day I was working, but in between work I was doing things at home, right? So and if I were to time everything out, I spent more time doing things at home than I did working, right? Like I spent more time, not as much time working yesterday. And I was thinking about that because I had time to be alone with my thoughts. And normally I would feel guilty. I would add some level of pressure to myself, which that's always my struggle. We've talked about that before on here and outside of here, how like that's normally what I do. Well, I was thinking about that, and my post yesterday on LinkedIn was around work-life balance. And there is a lot of discussion out there about work-life balance where people are saying some people believe that it doesn't exist. Like, no, there's no such thing as work-life balance, right? I disagree with that. I definitely think that work-life balance is not a steady state. Like you can't like achieve that and now you have it and it's forever. It definitely doesn't work that way. But it's something to be mindful of, because if you're mindful of it, then it helps for you to be in control when you're making decisions about what you're going to say yes to and what you're going to say no to, right? If we're not thinking about trying to maintain some semblance of balance, knowing that sometimes it's going to lean one way or the other, if we're not mindful of that, we might say yes to everything, for those of us that are inclined to say yes, and then we end up in that stage of burnout where we're just like, I can't do one more thing, um anyway, as you were talking about that, it just it made me think about that post and that whole concept of balance, and how, yeah, I don't know, but like so many things that I can't even pick the one thing to say, but um I don't know, maybe I lost my train of thought there, but um it's just important for us to pay attention to where we are and to give ourselves permission to ease up on the expectations that we place on ourselves, which comes back to the whole thing about grit, right? Okay. So how does it come back to grit? Because to me, and my thought on your post about grit was, from a business owner perspective, and I describe, she's talking about, in that video, she's talking about growth mindset. Right? And what she's saying about growth mindset, what growth mindset is that you understand and believe that we are continuously learning and growing. And if you adopt that mindset, Then when you try something and things don't go right, you say, okay, well, I tried it, and what can I learn from this? And what lessons can I take from this and continue moving forward? And as a business owner, that is huge. That's like everything, because things are going to happen. And you if you don't have that mindset, you're going to experience enough hurdles, or you're going to run into enough brick walls where you just stop. You give up, or you get burnt out, or you get overwhelmed, or you just are like, all those things that you said, like, who cares? What is all this for? What does it matter? Let me just go apply for a job, right? Because that's going to be easier. And I guess part of the reason why I brought up the whole thing about work-life balance and how I was like, spent less time working yesterday than I did doing things at home, is because when I give myself permission to do that, I am able to come up with brilliant, creative strategies for what I'm going to do next. This is the end of the year, and a lot of us are thinking about next year, right? Like, and we're asking ourselves those questions, the growth mindset questions that we were just talking about, right? Like, okay, what have I done, and what's worked, and what lessons have I learned, and what can I take with me into next year? That right there embodies grit, right? Which we have to have as business owners. But sometimes we don't ask ourselves those questions if we don't pause for a minute to actually ask, right?
Yeah.
And we're so busy moving forward and digging that trench, like on that track, that we don't stop for a minute to ask ourselves those questions. So anyway, this is like maybe like word vomit, but I wanted to bring up that post on grit because I thought it was so poignant and such a great topic for us to talk about today, because grit is central to owning a business, especially as a solopreneur, because
Yeah.
it's just harder for us.
Yeah. It is. It really is.
And we are at risk of burnout
Yeah.
if we're
Yeah.
not careful.
Yeah. It's true. And then we have to be careful too, because sometimes people, they want to come like network with you or with me, or I mean, just in general, but we don't always know what their intentions are, and it's like, do they really just want to network, or are they trying to like mimic you? And I know that we kind of talked about that before too, that, there is more than enough work for everybody. There truly is. And what you do in the career strategist space, no one else can do. We know that. We also know there's a lot of career coaches out there. We know that what I do in burnout, no one else can do it, but there's also a lot of burnout coaches out there. And so it can seem so daunting, right? And that's another level of what can take away from movement and progress. And that's when grit also has to be really implemented with the day to day, because it's so easy to feel like it doesn't matter,
Sure,
right? There's someone else that can do it better or something, right?
yeah, case in point, I don't know if I shared this with you, but I just came across my first copycat.
I, well, is this the first one, the one with the LinkedIn? Is that the one?
Did I tell you that already?
Tell me, share it here so people can.
Yeah. So to your point about networking, and you don't know what people's intentions are with networking. I always go into it with the assumption that I want to learn about your business, you learn about my business, so that we can figure out avenues to help each other, right? And possibly even refer people not possibly even ideally find avenues to refer each other if we develop a referral relationship, right? Because I need to know, like, and trust the person before I'll make a referral to them. In any case, that's always my thought process, not because I'm intentionally trying to keep that focus. It's just naturally what I think. And I had a networking conversation with another career coach who is earlier in her business than I am. She was trying to figure some things out, and I shared with her the things that I'm doing, my language, like, you know, my analogies. There are usually some analogies that I'll default to. And I see a post on LinkedIn from this person using the language that I came up with myself, that I just naturally default to. And I was like, huh, that's really interesting. I didn't know what to feel about. Like, I had the entire range of emotions when I saw that. But ultimately I remembered that old adage that um imitation is the best form of flattery, right? And I was like, okay. But then I also, after that, came back to the point that you're making about how, okay, maybe that person has changed their promotional language, where she's now promoting herself to do something very, very similar to what I'm doing for people, and she's describing it in the same way. She's using my same little, analogies to make the point. But nobody can do what I do the way that I do it.
Yeah.
No one has the same experiences that I have. No one has the same thought process that I have. So it's just different, and I let that go. I like totally even forgot about that until you brought it up just now. But that's an example of grit too. Okay, well, let's get back in touch with me and why I stand apart from my competition and lean into that.
Right.
And that's it. And that's grit.
Yeah. And for people who are just starting out, they have like that shaky faith, like there's this passion in my heart. I really want to do this. I feel very called to be in this coaching space, right? It's so easy to feel less than. Well, who am I to feel like I have something different or special or more to bring to the table in this space over someone who I've looked up to and been following along for like 10 years? Like, who am I? But we have to remind our listeners that if that passion is put in your heart, if that is a fire that burns inside of you, that is who you are. You are that person who will make an impact on people's lives in such a way that nobody else can, and no one can take it from you. And so find peace in that, but let that grit be that driving force for you to keep moving forward. Don't give up.
Yeah, yeah. And lean into you, who you are, why you are different from everyone else, and share that with the world. Because if we don't share that, then the world won't know.
Yeah. And people need you.
And people need you. Yeah. They need to know there are people out there looking for someone exactly like you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So share it.
Yeah. Yeah. Unwavering faith, right?
And
Grit.
grit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 Well, let's keep it short today.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but there are, like, I have all kinds of things piled up because I ended up taking last week off for the most part, like 80% off.
Yeah.
Like, as far as my time. I only met with some of my existing clients, so I have appointments, I have consultations, I have all the things to do. So yeah, let's keep this one brief this week, and then we'll come back next week and continue the conversation on whatever the heck it is that we feel like talking about next week.
I love it. Sounds great to me.
All right. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm Griselle Scarantino.
I'm Anna Lovell Nesmith.
We'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye.